Hi everyone, Dave here. Thanks for coming along to another episode of Legends of the Spire. Great to have you with us. This is the podcast that speaks to the former players and managers of Chesterfield Football Club about their careers in the sport. And I also sometimes speak to the supporters too, and that's what I'm doing this week. And it was actually my first supporters panel that I've had on this week. So I spoke to five female Chesterfield fans about their experiences of being a fan of the club. Now, this all came on the back of rather unsavoury experiences of Alicia, who speaks on the podcast just in a little bit, about being in the pub before the Notts County game a few weeks ago. Now, obviously with football, it has a way of mirroring attitudes in general society, so I think this is something really important to talk about. And Alicia, Stella, Ruth, Katie and Megan spoke really well about their experiences on social media and also travelling to matches, being there before, during and after the games. So it was really interesting and hopefully some food for thought for all of the fan base out there and everyone who's listening. As always, I am at Spire Legends on Twitter and Instagram, and Legends of the Spire on Facebook, so do get in touch. But I hope you enjoy this today. It was really great to speak to them. We had, as well as talking about the issues that they faced as a supporter, we also spoke about some of those great matches as well, and some of the highs and lows of being a supporter over the last few years, so always good fun. So here we are with our supporters panel this week. Enjoy. Legends of the My first question, as like a starter for 10, is like your history of being a supporter. So like first memory of a match, which is your like Chesterfield era that you started with. So I'll go around as clockwise. I have it on my screen. So Stella, I'm going to pick on you first. When did it start for you?
Well, we moved here in 2008, and Paul suggested we went to Saltergate for one match. It was against Brentford, of all teams, looking at where they are now. We lost 1-0, and I think the only memorable thing was two very frightened children as everyone was on their feet baying for a red card as Jamie Lowry was badly injured.
Was that the one where he was shunted into the wing stand?
That was exactly that one, right in front of us. And everybody on their feet baying for this red card and two terrified children. So it took us a while to go back again. And it wasn't until we moved to the new ground and he said, I fancy going looking at the new ground. Should we go and watch a match? Yeah, it's fine. And we were 3-0 down at 18 minutes in, 4-1 down at half time. And then by 5-4, I'd already had that moment that I thought, oops, I think I found my team. And of course, it was that epic Crew 5-5, at which point I completely lost it. No voice left, sore hands, and realised that was it. I'd got a club for life.
Good old Craig Clay.
Good old Craig Clay. I've actually told him it's his fault to his face.
It's funny the things these footballers have to take responsibility for, isn't it? Yeah. Years of woe and a few little years of pleasure in between all of the years of woe. It's usually the way it goes, isn't it? So Megan, what about you?
Well, for as long as I can remember, really, my mum and dad used to run SIFA, the fans association, when I was growing up. So I was always sort of on the periphery of that and sort of the token child, the cute one that would go and get involved. And then when I was 9, so it had been around the 2007-8 season, I thought, I'm a bit fed up of being on the edges of this. And I think that was the season I had a half season ticket, and then I've had one ever since. Followed them home and away. Nice.
Who was your like favourite player back in the day then from those?
It's got to be Jack, hasn't it? Always.
Yeah, I suppose it hasn't it. I remember I chased him through the car park once because I had a shirt that I wanted him to sign, and it was on those where he had nothing to lean on, and he was like, "Oh, we'll just use Drew Talbot's car," and he kind of leaned on Drew Talbot's Land Rover, I think, to sign my shirt.
At the first proper match at the new stadium, I walked out as mascot hand in hand with Jack. That's like the big thing when we moved to the new ground. I was a child then.
I keep sending him messages on various different platforms. He's not putting the injunction up against me yet, but it probably won't be long because I've tried him on LinkedIn. I've tried him at his Sheffield United email address. I've tried him in other places. I've tried to get Tommy Lee to get him to come on. I've tried to get other people to get him to come on, and they're all like, "No, he'll not do it. He'll not do it." But I keep trying. One day, you never know.
Fingers crossed.
Who should go to next? Ruth, how about yourself?
Well, I started when I was in sixth form back in the 90s. My best friend from school, Catherine, used to go with her dad, and I tagged along for a game. And yeah, we used to go to the games. There was a group of 3 or 4 girls with her dad. And I remember queuing most of the night for the 1997 Cup final and semi-final, I should say. And when we went off to university at the age of 18, we used to come home for the weekend. We'd know which weekend town were playing at home, and would meet up on the terrace and arrange our arrangements for the evening out that evening. And unfortunately, I never moved back to Chesterfield, and it was nice to have a link with my hometown. So I've always been a Spireite, even though I haven't lived there since the age of 18. So I go to a lot of the southern matches now because it's easier for me to get to. But yeah, so
it's nice to see the odd one out in a different area as well, isn't it? If you move away, you're like the only Chesterfield fan within.
And I regularly wear my woolen beanie hat and my scarf just as general warm wear, and people always mistake it because it begins with CH and they can't read. And they're like, well, who's Chesterfield? And I educate them, and they can see I'm from Chesterfield. And I've actually met a couple of people in my town who are actually Chesterfield supporters randomly, which is always fun. So, yeah.
Good spirits. Okay, Katie, you're next.
So I had an unfortunate series of events for my first 2 or 3 games. I don't know what order these happened in, but I was at Saltergate for the Bradford fire disaster, and then I was at Saltergate for Hillsborough. And whoever thought after that, this girl needs to keep going to football, I don't know, because that just seems crazy to me. I think maybe my first game at Saltergate, though, was the cast of EastEnders versus Chesterfield taxi drivers. That does sound like it might be made up, but I do have a programme for it somewhere. It really did happen, I promise. And then the playoff final in 1990. My dad came home from work one day and said to my brother that he'd got him a ticket, and my brother didn't want to go. So I said, oh, I'll go. And that was it.
Can you watch Homes Under the Hammer? Because I asked that to Lee Rogers and he said that he can still watch it.
No, every time. Every time you did us. And I didn't even see it because it being Wembley, there was a post in the way. So I didn't even really see the goal properly.
Oh, not a bad thing, I suppose.
Yeah.
And Alicia, yourself?
So I don't really remember my first games because my dad insisted I started going from 3 years old. So my mum grew up a Sheffield Wednesday supporter, but he soon converted her, and now she goes to all the away games with me and Katie. So they started taking me from really, really young, so I obviously don't remember it. My overwhelming memory from my early games isn't actually the football, it's the fact that my favourite player was David Reeves, and he used to come and have a chat to us. I don't know what this was based on because I was 4 or 5. But he used to come and have a chat to us before the game. And I had like a little signed photograph of him that I wrote in my 5-year-old handwriting in silver sparkly pen that this was my favourite football player. But I can't say I really remember the actual football. And then I didn't go for a few years. And then remember the Wembley Johnston's Paint Trophy when I was 12, and I think that got me into following it all again. But I really got into going to the away games in the last sort of season or 2. But yeah, I have limited memory of the actual football matches from the early days because I was so young, but it's always been a part of my life, even though I don't actually live in Chesterfield and never have. It comes from my family and my dad. So yeah, I even have family in America now that are still avid supporters. So yeah, we've spread out a little bit, but all of us are still Chesterfield fans.
Fotheringham. That's Thompson's header. Is that a high boot from Bowden? Play goes on, and Westcar is through. He's got his second one-on-one opportunity. This time, no mistake. Chesterfield have won the Johnston's Paint Trophy.
So, what about your recent memories then of the last few years? Shall we go to? I'll go the other way around this time. So, Alicia, if you want to start, like, what's it been like in the last? It's obviously been a bit up and down, isn't it? And you're going to a few away games and stuff. What's it been like?
So I suppose for me, I really started actually working at the club when I was 19, so 4 years ago. So I maybe have a different experience because I was sort of working for home games, but also sneaking away to watch as much as I possibly could. And I think there's been a massive turnaround, really, hasn't there? I remember just before COVID, it being quite a difficult atmosphere at work, and then the last year has just been great, and that's when I've gone to almost every away game in the last this last year, and I've really fell in love with the club again. Not that I ever wasn't a Spirite, but I think it's been a great year, hasn't it, really, apart from with the ups and downs since the trust took over and things. I think my overwhelming memories this season, I think we've got to bring up Chelsea, haven't we? It's one of those memories that no one really cared about the result by the end, did we? No one cared that we lost 5-1. It was just that moment. And Katie's going to get sad in a minute because she had COVID. She had tickets but had COVID and couldn't go. And yeah, it was just amazing. And then in terms of league games, I really remember, I think I'll always remember the atmosphere at Stockport away until Jeff King got sent off. And with everyone loves Danny Webb, don't they? And the fact that he was in charge and we were winning 2-0. I think last season and this season is this. I'll remember it in 20 years. If you ask me about it, I'll still have great memories. I think it's been a really good feeling in general.
So, Katie, tell us about missing out on games.
Yeah, so missing the Chelsea game was not great. I went down, I actually broke COVID rules and went down in my mask to wave the coaches off and just stood and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. It was horrible. Came back, watched the game on TV. And I'm not really sure why, but our TV was a tiny little bit behind, but Liam Norcliffe's tweets were just a tiny bit in front of the TV. So I knew that we'd scored before we'd scored. So that gave me a little minute to, steel myself and prepare for it. But yeah, I wasn't happy at missing that. That's husband's fault. Well, actually, husband went to Mansfield a few days earlier and then came back with COVID. So
obviously their fault.
Yeah. Aside missing Chelsea, I had a bit of a hiatus until last season because, children, life, etc., etc. So my last season of really attending heavily would have been the Luke Beckett season. So obviously that was one club crisis, and then I joined in again at the next club crisis. So I missed all of the in-between years, certainly going to games because of babies and, blah, blah, blah. And then for no real reason at all, just decided last season that I was going to go to Aldershot away by myself on the coach. And that was it. And same as Alicia last season, I missed 5 last season away. Home's more tricky because I work there too. So I don't count them as having attended.
I count them as having attended.
I know you do, yeah, I don't. If you've not seen kickoff and the final whistle, then you haven't been.
You see the TVs.
Yeah, when they're working.
Ruth, how about yourself? Any happy match memories?
My best match memory would be the 1997 Semi Cup final at Old Trafford. The elation of the we were ahead, and then it was a disallowed goal, and then we equalised. That was fantastic. All the girls were together. It was great. Like some of the other girls, I wasn't going to regular matches. After I was married, I was working in the NHS doing shifts, and you can guarantee whenever there was a game, I would be working. When we were first married, we lived next door to Leyton Orient, and I walked literally by the away terrace. We walked out of my back door into the away terrace to the amusement of the local stewards, because obviously I was a local resident. That was quite amusing, going to, before they upgraded the Leyton Orient Stadium. I changed my job about 4 years ago, so I don't do shifts anymore. So I've got my weekends back, and I decided I was going to start going to football again about 4 years ago. And yeah, before that I'd been to the occasional Boreham Wood and Barnet game, but now I'm going to more games, especially in the south. There's a London Spirite supporters group that are quite happy for me to tag along, which is great. And social media has just opened up my football life. You know, checking the scores on Twitter and checking the forums. It's great. Yeah. So
good luck.
It's almost a different experience to, obviously I'm probably a little bit older than some of the girls here. From when I was going in my late teens, early 20s, with social media, it has, you know, everyone, you've got podcasts. It's a different experience now, which is great. You can chat about the game before it happens and consider who's playing, who's injured. Yeah.
I do miss teletext though. We get it going round page 1, page 2, and they have to wait till it comes round to page 1 again to see if you've scored. So you just had like on scrolling teletext.
I do remember in the 90s, we nearly got promoted or nearly made the playoffs, and I went to Skegness with my friend Kim, and we had to basically check the scores in the newspapers the next day. So we were there trying to find the scores in the Sunday newspapers to find out whether we'd made, I can't remember if we would, and we missed out by 1 point. We lost the game, so we didn't actually either make the playoff or we didn't get promoted. And I can't remember, it would have been about 95, 96 then. But I remember us not knowing the score until the day after. That seems mad now.
Doesn't it? They don't know how good the game nowadays. So Megan, how about yourself?
I think I can actually remember teletext, believe it or not. But yeah, I think social media has definitely changed the way you view the game almost. And the Liam Norcliffe tweets when my stream's slightly behind, they have to be muted because I can't cope with them being spoiled. You were just talking then about memories of matches, as sort of not to put a downer on it, but the thing that stands out to me in the last season was not going to the match, but listening to the commentary when Cabby had his horrific injury, and just knowing that was the kiss of death for that match, that not the season of course, but that's the one that sticks in my head. But if you're looking for more positives, it is the JPT, it's the infamous Jack game against Rotherham and all of those things, and you think actually we have had a bit of a turbulent few years, but there are amazing memories, and hopefully a lot more to come. Hopefully it's all looking up.
Stella, how about yourself?
Like Megan, loads. I remember exactly what I was doing when I heard the 1866 commentary, and Bron was trying not to say how badly injured Cabby was, but it was obvious from what he wasn't saying that was it. He was done for the season. But the highs are the 2012 JPT final, especially as that was the one that I had a little voice from the back of the car went, can I go and watch Chesterfield again? And I knew that was it. I was going to get to watch matches regularly from that point in. Even watching Scunthorpe beat us 4-1 the following week didn't put him off. That's it. But absolutely loved the Chelsea match and loved the draw. That this house went absolutely mental when David Seaman pulled us out of that bag. But I've started going away a lot more in the last season or so. I did my first ever alone away match because the boy come with me, and I went to Stockport away. Loved that. Absolutely loved it. Like Alicia, until Kingy got himself sent off. But I used that as a bit of preparation. The boys go into uni next month, and I'm need to still be getting used to going on my own.
Well, it'll be a very rare defeat for Chesterfield this season. They'll have to take what they can from it. Shimanga wants to get the shot away here. Good save, but it must be. It is Asante. And that's the biggest roar of the evening. 6,000 Spireites going absolutely potty.
So we've established that you're all full-on Chesterfield super fans in terms of your history of the club and last few seasons and everything like that. So this has kind of all happened, this podcast, because of the negative side that has kind of come from it. So I think it's probably, Alicia, do you want to start?
Yeah, okay. So I'd like to preface with the fact that generally, so my group of who I go to football with is more often than not women only. So I go with my mum and Katie. And honestly, as a general rule, it's good. Like, obviously I work at the club as well, so I know a lot of people and I generally feel really welcome and I talk to lots of people and I don't feel any different from any other fan, which is obviously as it should be. Not in particular just felt like a really bad atmosphere. I don't know whether it's because it's so local, people were there drinking all day, or there's a lot of people in one place. I don't really know. But we were at the pub, me, Katie, my mum, Tom, and my mum's partner for a couple of hours. And it was a particularly negative atmosphere, I think. I think there was a lot of chanting of that chant that we all hate. And there was some catcalling of random girls walking past. And I was already feeling a little bit uncomfortable with all that. And then there was a moment of, we were looking for a table and I said, we can sit over there. And this random lad shouted across to me, like, oh, you can sit here, like in a sort of sexual way. And that was uncomfortable. And then just as we were leaving, my mum and Katie had already left and Tom and I were a bit behind them. And they stopped Tom and for some reason, talking about he was wearing an old shirt from relegation year and they sort of quizzed him on that. And I sort of completely offhand went, he's only wearing that because he hasn't washed his new one. And immediately that started it. And they didn't talk to me at any point. They were all talking to Tom about me. So after I said that, they turned to Tom and went, oh, well, she should be washing that. And I think I said something like, we could do his own washing. And again, they ignored me and kept talking to Tom about how I should be doing that. And then I think the comment that made me the most uncomfortable was, you need to sort her out, which I don't know how anyone else interprets that. But to me, the idea of sorting someone out is bordering on sort of violent language, or at least aggressive language. And then I didn't really know what to say, to be honest, because they were talking as if I wasn't there. And I don't think Tom knew what to say either. And then they got to, oh, well, you know what wife stands for, and went washing, ironing. And at that point is when I cut them off, because I didn't want to know what F meant. I think we can all guess. And I just said, oh, we're leaving now, and sort of pulled Tom away. And I think what was almost more impactful to me than the words was the fact that it was only really one of them saying it, but the whole table thought it was so funny. And I was so uncomfortable. And the fact that it was just a joke. And they may have thought it was that, but it was really uncomfortable for me. And I think it goes further than it being just banter, doesn't it? It feeds into a sort of larger thing of it being normalized to say things like that. And it put I wouldn't say it ruined my day or anything like that. The match was great, etc., etc. Most people are great, but it just sort of put a bit of a dampener on the day, I suppose. And then Tom tweeted about it. I probably wouldn't have said anything because of the concern of me saying something and then there being more sexist abuse at me speaking out. So I didn't say anything, and then Tom did, and it it just blew up, I guess. And it turns out that from that experience, I heard so many more stories from both that day and in general, which proved to me that the problem's deeper than we know, but potentially people don't say anything about it. They just brush it off. So I think the fact Tom made that tweet and then I spoke to a lot of people about it actually drew some attention to the issue. And I heard so many more stories. And yeah, I think maybe some good has come of it because we're talking about it. But yeah.
Anyone else got anything they want to say on the back of that rather than to go around? Megan?
Like what Alicia's just said about all of it was directed at Tom, not at her. And sort of, I think I've become so thick-skinned to it, having grown up around it, that I've just got a quick answer for whatever is thrown at me. And normally I should stress, it is a minority. But normally you'll get a laugh out of the blokes or the blokes around them, and a fair enough, or you get the further comment of, oh, she's got a gob on her, but the one that sort of sticks with me, I think it is a recurring theme of Chelsea, and I won't repeat the comment because it was lewd, and I can't remember what I said, but I said something cocky back, a bit of, not cocky's not the right word, a bit, giving them banter back, if that's what we're calling it. And the bloke, my dad's turned round and said, what are you doing? And the bloke recognised my dad and went, oh, is she your daughter? Yeah, mate, I'm ever so sorry. I wouldn't have spoken to her like that if I knew. So I again said, excuse me, you didn't say it to him, you said it to me. If you're sorry to me. At which point he walked away. And you just think, all of my adulthood, I'm just used to just giving it back and joking back. Is that the right thing to do? Because is it just not encouraging the behaviour, but is it glossing over the behaviour? But it was the apologising to my dad, and it was the realisation as well that as I go to more matches without my dad and people don't realise who my dad is, more of it I get. So actually I've been sheltered because people respect my dad, not because they respect me.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've had a little problem sitting where I do because I'm in the East Stand in the family section. So I've been shielded from it. It's more noticeable at away matches. But yeah, it's more noticeable that you need to step in sometimes. And actually, it's good if it's their mates reining them in, but it's quite often somebody else that has to do it. I had a bit of an incident at the first Johnson's Paint Trophy. Guy was a bit drunk and was commenting on my clothing. And I've got 2 young children there, and he's not giving up. I'm steaming, not saying anything because the children are there. So he wasn't getting the usual banter or getting told where to go. And my husband had to turn around to him and say, mate, she's not happy, leave it. I advise you to leave it. Both her kids are watching. Don't get her to the point that she says something to you. And in the end, his mates actually went, mate, just leave it. As he started to try and apologise, just leave it, stop there. And that diffused the situation without me having to go in with the banter or telling somebody where to go.
Ruth, were you want to say something?
I was going to say, maybe I've been very lucky that I haven't personally experienced any lewd banter, shall we call it. I do get funny looks when I discuss my plans with friends. Oh, you're going to, I'm travelling for the weekend on my own. And once Chesterfield got relegated down to non-league, I didn't know there was a non-league pyramid. And I discovered there's lots of lower league games that happen in the pyramid. So I go to some of my little local matches that are about this level of Matlock Town or David Mine as well, for that sort of level, step 6 and step 3. And I've never ever had a problem. They don't segregate. They're there to watch the football. You go to a bigger game where you have to segregate the fans, and I go to a lot of more away matches than home matches. I've only been to the Technique 3 or 4 times, but I've probably been to Barnet more. Yeah, and it's a day out on the beer, and it's the beer talking, but they don't seem to direct it at me. thankfully, or maybe I've just been lucky, I don't know. And social media is vile, shall we say. I don't put my name Ruth on my social media, because if I'm talking about football, I will get shouted down if they think they're talking to a woman. So I have a very generic handle. I might use my initials or another name entirely, and I shouldn't have to do that, because I'm not prepared for someone to shout me down where it's obvious they'll respect me if they think I'm male, which is bizarre. And maybe the younger girls are better at standing up for themselves. I don't want to enter into it on social media. I don't call them out on it. Say, by the way, I am female XYZ. Maybe I haven't got the confidence of these younger girls that are here, unfortunately. But maybe that's
Shouldn't
just
be
my way of
necessary
dealing
though.
with it.
You shouldn't need confidence or
I know,
otherwise.
exactly.
I'm
It
the way
shouldn't be
I am
happening.
because I have to hold my own, and that's just the way. Probably
And
part
I am
personality, but part of the way you grow up around it.
Absolutely itching to be on that away terrace when they start singing that particular chant, and they're never within actually a shot of me for me to say, call them out on them, to call them out, because you're always going to get a little bit of banter and swearing, which probably doesn't bother me, but there's that one that does, and I'm just itching to get my hands on whoever starts that particular chant. And
I'd say about the younger girls calling it out is I think it perhaps is becoming a thing like that. We can talk about sexism is something that's being generally discussed more in society for sort of my generation. It's less brushed off, but at the same time, I felt really anxious about it being as did. I didn't expect Tom to be so public and me to talk to so many people. And actually, when at the last home game and the last away game, so Barnet and then Altrincham game, I was really, really anxious that someone would say something to me because it was so big. But nothing happened. And I think that's the start of it, is for us to talk about it more. It's quite difficult, but I think that's the way we change it, isn't it? It's just not very easy sometimes.
Especially if I'm travelling on my own. My husband is not a Spirite. I got into a couple of the women's games over the summer, the starting and the Wembley final, which he thought was fantastic, and the atmosphere in the crowd was totally different. You didn't get any of that because it was 2/3 female and children families, which was great, and it was great. And the difference between that and a man's match, male footballers match. What's the correct term now? I don't know.
It is really different. We went to a few of the Euros matches, didn't we, Katie? And it is quite different.
Yeah, it's much more of a family atmosphere, and you don't ever feel unsafe or like anything might happen, because it's just families and people just having a nice time.
Silly things like, remember it was really hot during the Euros, and I was really conscious of what I wear to football matches, just because I don't want to be objectified, I suppose. But at the women's football matches, I was like, oh, it's really hot, I'm going to wear my shorts.
Yeah,
it's a different environment.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Yeah, but like you say, you shouldn't have to think about what you're going to wear. Like sometimes I go to games straight from work when it's an evening game, so I wear what I wear for work. And it wasn't really until Alicia ever said to me about, oh, you're wearing a dress for the football, like, you're brave. I was like, well, it's my clothes. I'd never really thought about, wearing a skirt or a dress or whatever, and what anyone might say. And as it is, nobody actually has said anything. But on the day of the Notts County game, when Alicia had said to me what happened, I was a bit like, oh yeah, that happens. If Graham had £1 for every time he was told to sort me out, we'd be absolutely minted by now. But then the next day, reflecting on it, I thought, if I, at Alicia's age, had have turned around and started saying to people, actually, no, that's not okay, it might not still be happening now for people Alicia's age. And hopefully that generation standing up for themselves will mean that their daughters won't have to go through the same thing. And if it takes a little bit of nastiness now almost, then maybe that's just what's got to happen so that it can get better.
So what are your kind of hopes then for this season, and how things can change off the pitch and how things are going to go on the pitch? Who wants to start?
I'd like nicer toilets for women. It's ridiculous. But for example, the Aldershot away last season, there was one Portaloo that was for all of the away fans, no male and female toilets.
Yeah.
And of course the guys had a pint or several and had weed all over the seat, and then the women were expected to sit on that, and I was like, nah, I'll just wait till we get to the services at the end of the day.
Sounds like
Thanks very much.
such a minute point, that, but it's so irritating.
It's
They have
such a
like
big
one
deal.
women's cubicle for every like 10 men's cubicle, as if like, women aren't expected to be there, so we don't need to be there. Yeah.
I had argument, not quite the right word, a disagreement with two stewards at Aldershot because they would not allow me to use the actual women's toilet because it was in the home end.
Yeah.
And it resulted in the gate's shut. I thought, well, the gate's not even knee high, so at this point I've stepped over it and I'm going. And on the way back out, he stopped me to say, you won't be allowed to do that again. And I was like, well, if I need another way, I will be doing that again.
You know, that's actually a problem at our ground. You know, when we put the away fans on the Little East and then we segregate the East and the Little East, there's no women's toilet. It's actually a problem at our ground, and it happened the other day. That sounds really minute, though. I think it's similar to the fact that I have a bee in my bonnet about the fact that our club shop do not sell women's shirts.
No.
And they don't
It's
fit
little things, isn't it?
anybody. It sounds ridiculous. I had to buy a child shirt. I am 23. I had to buy an age 14 shirt because otherwise I'm wearing a dress.
all of my tops are kids.
Yeah.
I mean, they are cheaper, so there's that silver lining.
That's the benefit. But just the fact that it's like, women aren't going to buy football shirts, so we don't need to stock women's shirts.
I have the opposite problem. I'm a little larger than you, so I need either a double XL or an XL. Because I'm not a slim, young, fit man. I'm an old woman and I'm got lumps and bumps. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds so silly, but it's that like accessibility thing. It's just like women aren't included, so we don't need shirts and we don't need toilets.
Yeah.
I'd say more sort of seriously. I honestly think the first step in making everything better is awareness, and I think the fact that we're even having this conversation, I think the major problem I've noticed with everything is that it's just banter, and therefore it's innocuous and it's irrelevant and it doesn't actually harm anybody. But I think it's that awareness that it feeds into a wider social problem and a wider problem in football and sport in general, and it's not funny. And even if you don't mean it to hurt anybody, it normalizes it. And then if making sexist remarks in a jokey way is okay, then what's the next step that's okay? It becomes a wider problem then, doesn't it? And I think the first step in overcoming that is just us talking like this, and the fact that I've spoken to so many women since this happened, and I think it's a cross club issue. So since our tweet went so public, I've spoken to Her Game 2 advocates from multiple clubs. In fact, Katie and I are going to meet the Her Game 2 advocates from Oldham before the game on Saturday. They asked to meet me, and I'm featuring in their blog and stuff, and it's that sort of, it's a bigger problem than just football. We support different teams, but we can come together and tackle this problem as a wider thing. I've spoken to some Her Game 2 advocates from Sheffield Wednesday, which is, I suppose, a bigger club, but it's a social issue that's maybe magnetised a little bit in football because it's quite a male-dominated space. And the first step is talking about it and people calling it out, and not just sort of brushing it under the carpet of, oh, this happens, it happens all the time. And clubs taking a stand is a big thing, and I think Chesterfield are quite good at it. They've made a statement, I've spoken to them, and I think that's a big thing, is because if it comes from your club, people are maybe going to listen rather than some random girl on the internet saying about it. So yeah, I think they're the first steps, I'd say.